Some connections defy logic. They arrive like rogue waves, sudden, powerful, impossible to predict. Quick pause. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If this story has you hooked, hit like and subscribe, because what's coming next is even more intense. I never believed in fate. As a marine biologist, I trusted data, patterns, the predictable rhythm of tides. But on one humid June night in Charleston, everything I understood about control shattered. His name was William. What I knew in that moment. His eyes held the same restless intensity as the ocean I studied. One conversation, one night, one decision that would change everything. 3 months later, staring at 2 pink lines and an ultrasound showing twins, I faced an impossible choice. Find the stranger who'd vanished, or raise these children alone. Twins. The word kept echoing in my head. My colleague Michelle had just confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks. She asked gently if the father knew. I shook my head. How could I explain that I didn't even know his full name? That our entire connection lasted 6 hours before he got an urgent call and disappeared into a waiting car? I told Michelle I needed to focus on my research. The reef restoration project was launching in 2 months. I'd been preparing for 3 years. But she reminded me I couldn't dive while pregnant. The pressure changes alone would be dangerous. I knew. My entire identity was built on field work, on hours spent underwater. Pregnancy meant desk work. It meant my career stalling just as it was taking off. That evening, an email arrived. Congratulations on the West Renewable Energy Partnership. William West personally requested me to lead the coastal impact assessment. First meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. My heart stopped. William West. I searched his name and found thousands of results. Tech entrepreneur, renewable energy pioneer. And there, buried in a profile from 2 years ago, a photo from a charity gala. Him. The conference room occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and windows overlooking Charleston Harbor. I arrived early, my blazer carefully chosen to hide what my body was just beginning to show. William walked in at exactly 10, flanked by executives. He looked the same, tall, intense, that focused energy that had first drawn my attention. Our eyes met. I watched recognition hit him like a physical blow. His stride faltered before he recovered, his expression shifting into careful neutrality. He thanked me for coming, his voice betraying nothing. The meeting proceeded with surreal normalcy. William outlined his company's plans for an offshore wind farm, the environmental concerns, the need for comprehensive marine impact studies. I presented my qualifications, my research on local ecosystems. I mentioned I'd need to assign a field team. The assessment required extensive underwater surveying. William said I could have whatever I needed, his tone professional, but his eyes kept drifting to me, questions written in every glance. The other executives filed out after an hour. I gathered my materials with shaking hands. I should leave. I should maintain professional distance. William said my name. When I turned, he'd moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent that haunted my memories. He started to mention that night, then stopped, running a hand through his hair. He told me he'd try to find me. He had to fly to Singapore for an emergency, and when he got back, he had no way to contact me. He only knew my first name. I told him quietly that I'd looked up Williams in renewable energy. There were 43. Silence stretched between us, charged with everything unspoken. I said it plainly because there was no gentle way. I'm pregnant. Twins. They're yours. William's face went through a series of expressions too quick to name. Shock, disbelief, wonder, fear. He moved to the windows, one hand pressed against the glass. He repeated the word, twins. Then he turned back to me with sudden intensity, asking if everything was okay, if I was healthy, if I needed anything. The concern in his voice undid something in my chest. I'd prepared for rejection, for doubt, not for this immediate, protective care. I told him I was fine, the babies were fine, but I couldn't do the field work for his project. He cut me off. Forget the project. He needed to know if I wanted this, wanted them. Because if I did, he was in, completely in. And if I didn't, he'd support whatever I decided. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I told him I wanted them. I was terrified, but I wanted them. He said we'd figure this out together. Over the following weeks, we built something fragile and strange. William rearranged his schedule to attend every doctor's appointment. He had my beach house renovated with an elevator and upgraded security, insisted on hiring a private nutritionist. One evening, as we reviewed nursery designs, I told him he was overwhelming me. This was all happening so fast. He acknowledged that he knew, but he'd missed the first 12 weeks. He wasn't there when I found out, when I had to process this alone. He couldn't get that time back, but he could be here now. I asked carefully what I really needed to know. Why was he really doing this? Was it guilt? Obligation? He asked, foundation for what? For a family? He told me that night wasn't random for him. He'd spent 3 months thinking about the brilliant woman who challenged everything he said about ocean conservation. When he found out I was pregnant, his first thought wasn't obligation. It was hope. Before I could respond, his phone erupted with calls. He stepped onto the deck, his voice rising in frustration. When he returned, his face was blank. There was a problem at the company. He needed to go to Seattle for a few days. The kind that could destroy everything. He hesitated, then told me something I should know. His business partner, Christine Ashford, she and he were engaged 2 years ago. It ended badly. She'd been buying up shares through shell companies, positioning for a hostile takeover. Now she was threatening to go public with allegations about unsafe testing protocols. I asked if the protocols were unsafe. No, but proving that took time, and perception was reality in tech. If investors panicked, the company could collapse. I understood. A scandal about his personal life, a secret pregnancy with a woman he barely knew, that would add fuel to the fire. William admitted Christine would definitely use it. He wasn't asking me to hide. He was just asking for time to handle the business crisis. I told him to go to Seattle and handle it. I'd be here. He left the next morning, but the distance only made me realize how quickly he'd become essential. We texted constantly. Late-night calls where exhaustion stripped away our careful boundaries. At 19 weeks, my routine ultrasound revealed a complication. Twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. One baby was receiving more blood flow than the other. If it progressed, we might need laser surgery. My medical training flooded me with knowledge I didn't want. This was serious. Life-threatening. I called William at midnight Seattle time. He answered immediately, his voice rough with exhaustion. I told him everything, my voice breaking. He said he was booking a flight. He'd be there in 6 hours. I protested that he couldn't just leave. He told me to watch him. He arrived as dawn broke over the Atlantic, still wearing his Seattle meeting clothes. He said softly that he was here. We were going to get through this. Over the next weeks, our relationship transformed. William moved into my beach house, working remotely while Christine's allegations hit the news. Stock prices plummeted. But William stayed, attending every appointment, holding me through panic attacks about losing one or both babies. One evening, as we watched news coverage of his company's crisis, I told him he should go back. His company needed him. His hand spread across my belly. He said his company had a board and excellent executives. I needed him more. These two needed him more. Nothing else mattered if he lost us. I asked what we were doing. We weren't together, not really, but we were living like a family. He cupped my face. He told me he was in love with me. He thought he had been since that first night, but he definitely was now. Watching me handle this, he was completely, irrevocably in love with me. I whispered that I loved him too. It seemed too fast, too impossible. His kiss stopped my words, gentle and fierce and full of promise. At 23 weeks, I underwent the laser surgery. William paced the waiting room, fielding crisis calls from Seattle. When the surgeon emerged with news of success, his knees nearly buckled with relief. But 2 days later, a photographer caught us leaving the hospital. By evening, the photos were everywhere. Tech Mobile's secret baby drama. The media frenzy was vicious. Christine Ashford gave an interview suggesting William's personal recklessness reflected his business practices. William stood at the windows. He said quietly he was destroying my life. My career, my reputation. He turned to me, his expression raw. He had a solution, but I was going to hate it. Marry me. I stared at him. Not like this. He knew this wasn't romantic, but he asked me to hear him out. Christine's leverage came from making our relationship look scandalous. But if we were married, if we presented a united front, the narrative changed. We became a love story, not a scandal. I said hollowly that he wanted a business merger. No. He pulled me closer. He wanted to marry me because he loved me, because he wanted to build a life with me. The timing was strategic, but the reason was real. He was asking me to make official what we'd both been feeling. He asked me to trust him one more time. I whispered, okay, let's do it. We married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the beach house. William promised to be my partner in every adventure, every crisis, every quiet moment. I promised to trust him even when logic suggested caution, to love him through whatever storms came. I told him he'd shown me that sometimes the best things in life arrive unexpectedly, like rogue waves. This wave brought me him, and I was ready to ride it wherever it led. The kiss tasted like salt air and promise. The media reaction was explosive, but the narrative shifted. The wedding photos, intimate, genuine, a love story, softened public opinion. Christine's press conference backfired. Within a week, she'd lost her board position. At 31 weeks, I went into early labor. 2 tiny girls made their entrance. First Michelle, fierce and crying. Then Christine, quieter but equally determined. William held both daughters, tears streaming down his face as he looked at me. He thanked me for trusting him, for giving him this gift. I thanked him for finding me, for diving into this adventure with me. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of a research vessel, watching my team prepare for a dive. William emerged from the cabin. West Renewable Energy had not only survived, but thrived. He showed me his phone screen. Both babies were visible in the video feed, babbling. Christine was trying to escape her bouncer again. I laughed, predicting she was going to be the troublemaker. William wrapped his arms around me from behind. Like her mother, I turned in his arms. I told him I loved him. Not because of strategy or timing, but because he was him. He said he loved me too. Always had, from that first night. Some connections really do defy logic. They arrive like rogue waves, unexpected and powerful, carrying everything you never knew you needed. The key is having the courage to ride them, to trust in the journey even when you can't see where it leads. Our wave had brought us love, family, and a future neither had planned but both had learned to embrace. And as we stood together on the edge of the Atlantic, I knew this was only the beginning of our adventure. The best things in life are worth diving into, even when you see and predict what you find in the depths. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed watching this. I will see you on the next one.
If you enjoy watching this, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.